Hey guys, Devil's Food Kitchen, new recipe, welcome back. Hey everybody, welcome back to Devil's Food Kitchen. I'm Chef Scott. We have another great new recipe for you this week. We are going to be making peach cobbler. I was in the grocery store not too long ago and saw some really beautiful ripe yellow peaches. I love peaches, I love cobbler, so I thought this would be perfect for this week's recipe. But that's not all. We are also going to tackle ice cream. How to make ice cream at home. We're gonna make vanilla bean ice cream. It's really simple recipe. If you'd like a printable recipe, you can find that in the description below, as well as the equipment I'm using today, including the ice cream maker that I use at home. If you'd like to skip ahead to the method, you can do that now. I do have some recipe notes. We're gonna talk a little bit about ice cream and making it, some notes about the cobbler, so stick around for that, and we'll get started right now. Okay guys, I thought we would talk about the cobbler first and then move on to the ice cream. So the cobbler recipe is super simple. You have your filling and you have your topping. The thing to keep in mind about the topping is that it has a high ratio of fat. There's a lot of butter versus the other ingredients. And that's intentional so that when you bake it, it sort of spreads and creates a crust. My only point with that is don't think that you can interchange that with, say, a streusel topping that you might use on top of muffins. That has less fat and is not going to spread. So you definitely want to use the cobbler topping for cobbler and then a streusel or crumble for other things like pound cakes and muffins. In terms of the filling, the recipe that I'm giving you is pretty universal, meaning you could use just about any fruit and get a good result. But you have to keep in mind that different fruits are going to have different water content. They're going to release that water at different points in the cooking and baking process, and they're going to have different levels of sweetness. So the two things that you may need to adjust are the amount of cornstarch or the amount of sugar. More acidic or tart fruit is going to need more sugar and vice versa. This recipe in particular works really well for stone fruit because it's formulated for peaches. So things like plums and nectarines would work really well with this. If you're going to use something like apricot, an apricot cobbler would be very interesting. Apricots have a lot less water. They're a much firmer, more stable fruit. So just keep that in mind. They're not going to release that water in the initial filling cooking process as readily as something like peach or a nectarine might do. So you may need to add just a little bit of water to that filling. On the other side of the spectrum, you have berries, things with really high water content. That might need a little bit more cornstarch, and it's going to need really gentle cooking during the filling cooking process because they're going to release their water very readily. With that in mind, if you use frozen fruit, that's going to release its water very quickly as well. So you may need to have a bit more cornstarch or cook the mixture a little bit longer to thicken it. That's really the only notes behind the cobbler filling and the topping. And after you make it once or twice, you'll be able to adjust it pretty quickly with whatever fruit you want to use. All right, let's move on to ice cream. So ice cream is a huge topic. It is way too complex in all of its different facets to go into in detail for this recipe, but I do want to give you some basics on making ice cream at home. I'll show you the ice cream maker that I use, and we'll talk about the basic concept. So at its most basic, ice cream is a fat base that is then frozen while mixing. Ice cream recipes can be as simple as milk, cream, sugar, and eggs, and as complex as having extra stabilizers and non-fat milk solids, etc. added to them. My recipe is somewhere in between. It's something I've used in my professional kitchens, and there are a few ingredients that I include that you can omit if you can't find them. The first one is non-fat milk solids. Now this should actually be pretty simple to find in most grocery stores. We add this if we want to add solid to our recipe base without adding the extra fat. But if you wanted to omit that, you technically could. The other is ice cream stabilizer. Now this one is really optional. I'm going to add a link below, but it can be hard to find and sometimes not worth the expense if you're not making ice cream all that much. The reason I have it in my recipe is because we use it in professional kitchens. That stabilizer will technically enhance the final texture of the product, but it also creates more shelf stability once that ice cream's out of the freezer. If I'm working a restaurant pastry line and I dish out some ice cream for a dessert, it may sit in the pickup window a little bit longer than I would normally want it to, and having that stabilizer in the recipe will help the ice cream stay solid so that the guest doesn't get ice cream soup, which is still delicious. So that being said, if you don't want to include any ice cream stabilizer in your recipe, you don't have to. Lastly, I call for a vanilla bean in this recipe. Now, I've used extract and paste in all of my other recipes that call for vanilla, but the reason I'm using a vanilla bean today is one, I want to show you how I split and scrape them, and then two, because the ice cream base is sitting overnight, having that vanilla pod in the base will infuse and impart that much more vanilla flavor that will translate to the final product. That being said, if you have extract or paste and you want to use that instead, you still can. So in terms of ice cream base, we first start by cooking it to pasteurize it. Even though the milk and cream and even the eggs that you use may already be pasteurized, it's still part of the process. You cook the base to pasteurize everything, and then you chill it, let everything stabilize, let flavors build and meld. I usually let my ice cream base sit overnight, and then you spin it. Spinning is the industry term for mixing ice cream, and two different things are going to happen in that process. It's going to freeze, and you're going to incorporate air, and both of those components play a big role in the texture of your ice cream. By spinning more rapidly, one, you're helping that ice cream base keep in its homogenized phase, meaning that you're keeping fat and water evenly dispersed really efficiently. You're also adding a lot of air, so you're going to have a higher volume to the ice cream, which is going to be not as creamy or dense, like let's say as a gelato, which is spun a lot slower. Then you have the freezing process, and the faster you can freeze your ice cream, the better, because the faster you freeze it, the smaller the ice crystals are that form. Smaller ice crystals is a more pleasant texture and is a more pleasant flavor because fat and flavor is distributed more evenly. Now, unfortunately, the mixing speed and freezing speed of a home ice cream maker just cannot compare to a professional machine. You're talking about an $80 ice cream maker versus a $30,000 ice cream maker. So if you're gonna make ice cream at home and expect to get like Ben & Jerry's or your favorite ice cream at the restaurant that you love, it's not gonna be the same. There's no other way to put it. It can't do the job of a professional machine, but you can still get really good ice cream as a result. So this is the ice cream maker that I use at home. It is a Cuisinart. I have the specific model in the description below. I think this is a really great mid-tier ice cream maker if you're gonna do it at home. If you've used a different ice cream maker at home and really love the results, please add that to the comments and share it with the DFK community. I'd like to know about it too. I'm always looking to upgrade my equipment because I'm a total pastry tech gearhead. The operation of this is really simple. Of course, we're gonna go through it in the step-by-step method, but a couple things I wanna point out is one, this is covered in plastic wrap because there's a little opening here. You wanna keep all of your material super sanitized when you're working with ice cream because there is that risk of bacterial growth since it's not a hot process product. Second, I have my ice cream bowl in the freezer, which is where it lives all the time. Making ice cream at home is a much lengthier process than doing it professionally. You have to freeze your ice cream container, your ice cream making container for several days to make sure that that core stays really, really cold, and that's gonna give you a better result. So I just keep mine in my freezer all the time and I bring it out just before I start mixing my ice cream. So those are the basics of making ice cream. The process is super, super simple. And once you've got a couple recipes under your belt, you can modify and customize your ice cream to whatever it is you may want. And with that out of the way, I think we are ready to start our recipe. Begin the ice cream by combining the milk and heavy cream, then whisk the milk powder in while everything is still cold. A fresh vanilla bean should have a shiny skin and will easily bend without cracking. Using a paring knife, fillet the bean down its length, using your thumb to keep the bean flat. A sharp knife is crucial for this step to avoid injury. Once the bean is split, use the blade of the knife to scrape the vanilla seed. I add this directly to my milk and cream. And don't forget to add the bean. Add the remaining ingredients to the ice cream base, then cook while whisking until the mixture reaches 180 Fahrenheit or 82 Celsius. A digital probe thermometer is really helpful for this step. Once cooked, add the ice cream base to a shallow dish and chill in the refrigerator, whisking often. To begin the cobbler filling, split your peaches in half and roughly dice them. We don't want too small a dice or the peaches will break down into a jammy consistency when cooked. Something around 3/4 of an inch is fine. And of course, don't forget to remove the pits. If only all prep work went this quickly. Add the brown sugar and vanilla paste, then cover the peaches and place them in the refrigerator. The sugar will soften the fruit and pull liquid from it, making the next step easier. And we call this macerating. Now back to the ice cream. Once the base has rested, whisk or hand blend it to homogenize the mixture. And don't forget to remove the vanilla bean. Place the frozen mixing bowl in the ice cream machine and add the scraper and top. Then turn the machine on and pour in your base. While the ice cream is spinning, I freeze a metal bowl that I plan to keep the ice cream in. And after 20 to 30 minutes of mixing, you'll have your very own delicious homemade ice cream. Scrape the ice cream into your frozen bowl, cover it, then place it in the freezer to firm up. Now that the peaches have macerated, we can finish the filling. Combine the water and cornstarch and mix into a slurry. Add the peaches, butter, and cornstarch to a large sauce pot, whisking the slurry into the peach water. Cook over medium-low heat until the filling thickens and bubbles. I use a spatula to avoid breaking down the peaches too much. Portion the filling into your oven-safe dishes. I'm using some individual portion 8-ounce ramekins and a family-style casserole dish. Combine the dry ingredients and room temperature butter and begin to mix. Add the egg while mixing and continue to mix until the topping comes together. It will be quite soft. A little flour on your fingers helps keep the topping from sticking to your hands. Break the topping into pieces and cover your cobbler filling. I chill the cobbler for about 20 minutes before baking to allow the topping to firm up. And just before baking, cover the topping with a layer of raw sugar. Allow the cobbler to cool for about 5 minutes, then wipe the sides clean with a pair of damp towels. Beware of burned hands. I serve the hot cobbler on a second plate, and a little trick is to wet a piece of paper towel to place between the plate and ramekin to keep it from sliding around. Now it's time to add our ice cream, If you'd like to use a traditional scoop, you're all done, but I'm going to scoop the ice cream in a quenelle for a pro touch. The key to a good quenelle, other than practice, is slightly softened ice cream and a very hot water bath for your spoon. Dunk the spoon in the hot water for 10 to 15 seconds before each quenelle. There are lots of methods for this technique, but I like to push the spoon away from me with the belly of the spoon facing up. Then, I twist the spoon so the bowl faces towards me and slides under the formed quenelle before pulling the spoon back towards my body to complete the scoop. And honestly, the best way to understand this is just trying it out. Here it is in slow-mo. Rub the spoon with the palm of your hand to heat it and release the ice cream. And voila! Hope you guys give this recipe a try, and thanks for watching.